The tale of Quentin Tarantino is not one that can be told in chronological order, or necessarily with Quentin Tarantino. Welcome to Bullets, Blades, and Babes. And today we are going to be celebrating the twins that are Sin City with guest director Quentin Tarantino, but with a cavalcade of stars that would make the QT himself blush. My name is Scotty R37. Oh wait, Kat, you're on Brain Detail. And Steve. First things first, I would like to say hello to Kat. How are you doing, lady?
All right.
Good. Anything going on?
No.
Cool. And then I would also like to say ahoy to Lemon Pie in the chat.
Ahoy.
And then also to Ashley, Lynn, Gaia Storm. I hope that last my bad was not your last my bad. So Kat, what is your perception of these two films?
I think the first one's really good. I like just the whole style, the noir, but done with a little bit of more flair, not as stale as a lot of noir films are. Adds a bit more theatricality to it, which it could use. Second one, I think they waited way too long to make it, and I don't think it was the best selection of stories to make a single film from, because each of the first three stories in the first movie have a lot of pop, like a lot of wow moments. The sequel didn't have as much, but I liked them a lot. I wish the second one had made more money so they could have done the third one, but
did you ever have any familiarity with the graphic novels, comic books, if you will?
Yeah, I was familiar with them.
And did you find it to be like a fantastic representation of the original work?
Well, it's sort of one of those, stylized straight up adaptations. So sure, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read them. I don't own any of them.
No, but I think and it's really cool to be able to see the storyboards in the books and then go and see the movie and you get to see the storyboards.
Yeah.
Like you get to see what you saw the first time you encountered Sin City.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really I've only read one. How many have you read? Any? Have you read one?
Maybe a couple. I can't remember. It's been too long.
Well, do you have... Okay, so I know I've read That Yellow Bastard.
Okay.
Which is the bait. Well, that's the bracket of the first one when
Nick
I know what
turns the story. Into... I know what the story is.
If I'm condescending, I'm sorry.
No, I know what it is. I rewatched it from the film, so yeah.
No, totes, but I'm just saying in terms of the representation of the book to the movie, that is such a faithful adaptation. It's incredible. I find it to be a cinematic... Like, when people ask about the best adaptations of literary works, I would put Sin City in there.
Okay.
Good talk. But yeah, what about the second movie brought you down?
Like I said, it was the selection of stories. They were kind of tame. Right. They didn't have that wild pop. Like the first one, you got Cannibal Kevin. You've got, Dwight and Jackie Rafferty. You've got the Yellow Bastard and Hardigan. And then the zinger that bookends the movie with the hitman.
Yeah.
And the new one, it's like, first of all, two of the stories are not even from the books. They're just made up. Made up for the movie.
Yes.
One is Johnny the Gambler with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I like the first half, and it kind of revs you up because you think he's got some type of plan up his sleeve. But then they cut it in half. We get back to it, and it's like, okay, there's sort of a payoff because he says, "Oh, everybody's going to be telling that story about how he beat you twice." But there was a hint of surprise on his face when Rourke shot him. Like he almost didn't think that was going to happen. he says, well, everybody's going to be telling that story. I'm like, well, not really, because Rourke dies in the next story. And you never really get to see his name dragged through the mud in the way that Johnny thought it would. So it was like, that's okay. The middle story, A Dame to Kill For, I mean, I get why they recast Dwight, because it's the version of him before he had the plastic surgery, but Josh Brolin doesn't hold a candle to Clive Owen in that role. And I just found the character a lot more stale and uninteresting compared to Clive Owen's take on it. And of course, another consequence of waiting so long is they had to recast other roles because Michael Clark Duncan had died, so they cast Dennis Haysbert to play Manute, and for some reason Devin Aoki wouldn't come back, and Devin Aoki wouldn't come back to play Miho, so they had to recast her. But that story, it was kind of tame and pretty straightforward. It was what was going on because it's pretty much spelled out who this Ava's character is all about. You kind of know where that's going. I did like the bit with Marv, Just Another Saturday Night. That was fun because that was actually funny. Marv's my favorite character from the Sin City universe. But
Mickey Rourke is phenomenal.
He is, and then the third story with Nancy wanting to get revenge on Senator Rourke. I'm like, the Rourkes are talked up in a lot of these stories as being these uber powerful people who not even Marv would dare go up against. And even Hardigan's like, oh yeah, Nancy, you'll get Senator Rourke. That's a wish that like I can't remember what he says, but sometimes he's talking about how impossible that is, and yet you think about it, in this movie it'd be really easy. Like if Johnny wanted to, he could have shot Rourke dead the minute he opened the door to go play cards because the guards aren't searching it. Like when the door opens, the guard is standing to the left of the door or to the right of the door, facing the table. He's not facing the door to see who's standing in the doorway. So Johnny could have literally kicked the door open with a gun and shot the senator dead. And so they keep talking how powerful these people are. Yet in the first story, when you meet Cardinal Rourke, Marv just narrates how powerful this guy is literally like 2 seconds before he kills him. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess that was nothing. And then Senator Rourke, it's like, oh, it just took a couple bullets because he's not like superhuman like Marv is, which is kind of neat. I really like that they don't tell you why certain characters are like Marv are able to take a beating in the way that they are, get electrocuted and survive. He just does. Whereas Rourke, he gets shot several times. And yeah, I can see why Nancy wants revenge and all that, but that story just seemed kind of stale because again, you're talking of this guy as like the big bad who runs all of Sin City and everything, and yet Marv and Nancy just effortlessly hop the fence into his place and waltz in and basically shoot everybody like it's nothing, and it's like, oh well, that wasn't really so it just kind of felt that story just kind of felt anticlimactic to how each of the stories treats the Rourkes as these uber scary powerful people. I was like, whatever. I actually was more interested in the Wallenquist character played by Stacy Keach in the sequel. Because he's like really weird, and I was like, what the hell's going on with him? But I will say that Powers Booth was very well cast as Senator Rourke. He was one of the best movie villains anyway. He just had it, and it was really sad that he died years ago. But he was great.
I really appreciate, and if you get the opportunity, I would say go check out Powers Booth in the my stars. It's not Mike Hammer. He did an HBO show in the late 80s, and it was who did Humphrey Bogart play? Sam Spade, I think. Anyway, Powers Booth is an incredible actor, and if you haven't sought out any of his work, you totally should. You've probably seen him in I don't know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Tombstone.
Going back to the first movie for the sake of positives to start off this review, I really loved the first little snippet with the Hitman thing because it's like you're just
should we go through?
Yeah, we can go through it. I mean, a little bit. Yeah, so the first story,
just story by story. We don't have to get into great detail.
Yeah, so the first story, you have Josh Hartnett playing this guy who meets this girl on a rooftop, and it's neat because it's all black and white, but she's in a gorgeous red dress, and the eyes are kind of highlighted a bit. And he's kind of been running from something. He doesn't know what. He does the whole cliche narrative thing. Like you think he presents himself as if he's going to be like the Sam Spade type character. Like, oh, tell me all your problems. I'm going to protect you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then he embraces her and shoots her in the back. And he says, I hold her close until she's gone, and I'll never know who she was running from or why. I guess I'll cash her check in the morning. And it's like, oh, he's just some indifferent hitman. And which is funny because there's that juxtaposition later on in one of the stories where Marv says, hitman, gotta love him. You never feel bad about what you do to him. But but not this guy. It's like, yeah, he killed this girl, and I don't know what she was running from, but I still kind of like him. And that was just a great hook to like, wow, this is. I mean, yeah, it's classic noir. It's total 40s hard-boiled type dialogue, but it just feels richer.
Well, and I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine at the tail end of high school, and they were like, "What would you want to see?" And I was like, "I want to see like a late 80s action movie that is animated. That's what I want to see." And I think the first Sin City pretty much does it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is so stylistic that when the good guys get shot and they don't die, I'm fine with it. And when the bad guys get 361 shot, I'm fine with it. Like, I do not care. Like, it is just Saturday morning cartoon rated R.
Yes.
And I love that aesthetic. I love that aesthetic. And more so in the first one, where there's a little bit more of a Bugs Bunny aesthetic. There's a little bit more winking at the audience. Did you know? Oh, by the way, can we talk about the cast of the first one for a bit here?
Of course, we're going through the first one.
All right. So we start off the movie with Josh Hartnett and she was in Planet Terror.
Yeah, I just looked up her name a while ago. I already forgot, and I can't open it on my phone. So while it's doing this,
she's pretty and talented. We swear.
But yeah, that's the only scene she's in.
True. Then so after that, we get the title card. And then we go to Marv, played by Mickey Rourke.
No, we go first to the first half of the Bruce Willis story.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake.
Yes, the prologue of the Yellow Bastard story. So this story begins with Bruce Willis and another Tarantino alum. Both of them Tarantino alums, actually. Bruce Willis and Michael Madsen. They're partners, and Bruce Willis is dealing with the angina, so his heart's like really kicking him a lot. And and he's talking about how Senator Rourke is the most powerful guy in the city, but his son is this pedophile child killer who gets protected all the time, and he's just kidnapped this 11-year-old girl, and he wants to save her. And Michael Madsen, his partner, being the jerk, doesn't want him to move in. He says, no, this is a bad idea. It's suicidal. And he's like, you got a bum ticker. You're pushing 60 with a bum ticker. You're not going to make it, type of thing. Cheesy, total vintage 40s dialogue, and I love it.
And Madsen does it so well.
He does. It's perfect. And he just kind of
ticker. Think of Eileen. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk.
Yeah. Go home and think of Eileen. And Bruce Willis is just looking all, as Hardigan is looking all hardened, and he's got this like gnarly X-shaped scar on his forehead, and he just kind of turns around and just sucker punches his partner, and he's like, hell of a way to end a partnership. Narrating, of course. And he turns around and he starts walking towards this warehouse by the docks, and you see these two guys, Dougie and whatever his name is. Hey, hello, Chris Shankland. So they're talking and they're watching the girl, making sure she's fine.
You know who one of them is?
I can't. One's Rick Gomez, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know who the other one is?
No.
Nick Offerman.
That's
from
right.
Parks and Recreation. I was blown away.
So, yeah, those two are there, and they don't really have much to say. They kind of walk off pretty quick, and then you have Nick Stahl, and he's with Mackenzie Vega playing the 11-year-old Nancy, and he's telling her, oh, you've been such a good little girl, and, don't cry, blah, 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 don't scream, and it's like, okay, this guy's a real creep. But then Hardigan shows up, and he can barely stammer into the room because his heart's, like, really acting up, and he starts teasing him about it. He's like, you can't even lift that cannon. But he shoots him in the ear, or shoots his ear off, rather. He screams, he falls down, he shoots him by the hand to knock the gun out of his hand. He's like, I take his weapons, both of them, shooting the gun out of his hand and then shooting him in the crotch. And then he's looking like he's about to finish it out on the dock, but then his partner shows up again, Michael Madsen, and just shoots the hell out of Hardigan. And at first, because this is my first time, back when I first saw the movie, I didn't know it was like these characters were near superhuman, because he shoots him several times, not just in the shoulders and the chest, everything. And I'm like, oh man, he's gonna die. And he tells him to stay down. I'm gonna shoot you again. And he gets up and keeps shooting him to death. And he tells Nancy to wait. And he's trying to buy time because he knows the backup's coming and that he can't kill the girl in front of the backup. So he succeeds in saving her. And he says to himself on the dock, like, old man dies, little girl lives. Fair
Yeah,
trade.
old man. Yeah, old man lives. Old
No, old man
man
dies,
dies.
little
Little
girl
girl
lives.
lives.
Yeah,
Fair
fair
trade.
trade.
And
And
that's the
that's
end of the
where
show. That's the
that's
end of
the
the
end of
show.
that story. And so those two characters were well cast. Nick Stahl as the guy is like, okay, creep. I guess it was okay. He fits the bill. It was only a couple lines. So then we go into the third storyline. This one's called the hard goodbye.
The hard goodbye.
We have Mickey Rourke playing Marv, with looks excellent in this role, and this is probably one of my favorite Mickey Rourke roles. It's one of my favorite.
I don't even know who did the prosthetics. I don't know.
I can't
Do you
remember. I know
know?
there's a featurette about it. No, there's a featurette about it, but they did a very good job. But
Yeah.
this is neat because he's in this room, and it's like black and white, except the bed is shaped like a heart, and so the bed and all the bed sheets are red. And the woman he's with, her dress is red, and her hair's gold, and her skin is actually colored in as well. She and the bed are the only thing that have any color in there. And Marv is talking about her Goldie. And at first you think, oh, this must be a hooker situation, but according to Marv, it's not. He says, no, she's just giving me the best time of my life type of thing. And they fall asleep, but when he wakes up, she's dead. And he's like, there's no injuries, and I didn't hear anything. How can someone sneak up on us like that? And then he hears the cops zooming coming his way, and he's like, man, the only person who knows she's dead right now are me and the killer, so somebody must have paid good money for this frame up. And Marv has to escape, and he's kind of badass about it. And he goes to his parole officer of all people to seek out help. And he's like, hey man, I'm innocent this time. I didn't do it. She gives him his pills, and you can tell she's like really. This is played by Carla Gugino, by the way, and she's like really frustrated with Marv, but she kind of likes him, gives him all the pills that he needs, and he tries to explain the situation.
Hang on.
Yeah, what?
Are we going to discuss the hardcore nudity of this series?
Sure. It hadn't happened yet, but okay.
Well, you just said something about Carla Gugino.
Yeah.
Well, she was naked.
I don't remember.
So was Jamie King as Goldie.
Yeah.
They're both naked. It's a titillating duology, if you will.
Okay.
What do you mean? Like, part of the reason why I would like, and part of the reason why I think that this is an interesting sort of convergence. Don't forget, like, comic book movies were on the rise at the time that this movie was made. We have two filmmakers that are dedicated to making, one that is dedicated to making adult, like, movies for adult audiences. This is sort of using the technology from Spy Kids to make an adult cartoon. Would you agree?
Sure.
And just in terms of having the nudity that is there, despite the cartoonish violence, like as you've mentioned, and it's like, oh, I don't know who's gonna live or die. Oh, well, there's a chick's boobs. It's like,
you can't really tell much in these first. You can't really tell much in these scenes anyway, because it's all in black and white and shaded with Venetian blinds and all that stuff. So
you know what? I think it's rather tasteful.
Okay, yeah, I didn't say it wasn't. So I can't remember how Marv finds out that she was actually a hooker, but he does, and he's trying to. So he goes on the hunt to try and find out about who this was and who wanted her dead. And it involves Marv killing a bunch of people and interrogating a hitman in the alleyway and torturing him and then killing him anyway. And but along the way, he keeps seeing Goldie again, and he's like, "What?" And she's trying to run him down and tries to run him over at one point, shoots at him at one point, and he can't figure out what's going on. And he starts piecing it together and realizing that, oh, I didn't know she was a hooker, but she must have come to me for help. She needed protection, but from who, he's not sure. And he finds out from. He goes to. Is this the same story where he goes to Old Town? And they take him hostage, and he gets tied up. Or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, so he ends up getting tied up, taken hostage in Old Town, and he finds out that the Goldie who's been chasing him is actually our identical twin, who mistakenly thought that Marv was responsible. And he's like, no, and he tells him what he's able to piece together. And she ends up dropping this bombshell on him that she would work for Cardinal Rourke and work those. That she was a hooker who worked around with those types of people. And he's like, oh shit, that's a big thing. And he's like, I can't figure out how this shit goes together or what it means. And at one point, Marv eventually gets caught. He ends up at the farm, which is the Rourke's farm out in the countryside. He finds himself in this dungeon where you have all these severed heads of these other women mounted on the wall like trophies. And Lucille, for some reason, they never explain how she got caught, but she's here.
And it makes sense.
Yeah, and so Marv goes over there to help her, and she's talking about how this sick guy like eats them, and she reveals that he bit her hand off and made him watch as he was eating the meat off her fingers. And the person responsible for this is played by Elijah Wood, Cannibal Kevin, and he just dresses in this this simple little zigzag like sweater. He's got the flap down collars with the plaid button shirt and the glasses, and he doesn't say a word. He wears aviator glasses with a buzz cut, and he's just totally nerdy, and he just, with these long fingernails, and
I should have worn that sweater. That's a great Halloween costume for me.
It is. And he's secretly listening outside the window, and Marv breaks his way out, and but Kevin attacks. He's like, that's not possible. Nobody's that quiet, or not even me type of thing. And he's like, come on, we're getting out of here. So he gets out of the way, and he gets Lucille out of the dungeon. But Lucille, hearing the cops come, think that, oh, I'm a parole officer, so this is going to be easy. So she smacks Marv upside the head when they're hiding in the trees, saying, sorry, Marv, I don't want to, you're going to get us both killed. So she walks out front and announces herself, but the cops turn out to be more or less private security for the Rourkes, and they kill her. And then Marv comes over to attack, and they're like, where is he? Where'd he go? Do you see a sign? He's like, this is a sign. And he comes forward with this big axe and just chops them all to pieces. At one point during his interrogation, he's like dragging a guy on the ground next to, while he's driving the car, like pressing his face to the ground. It's like, I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball. I'm like, Marv just feels so much fun.
He's a murderous lummox.
Yeah, so when he finds out about who this Kevin guy is and that he's affiliated with Rourke, he's like, yeah, I'm too dumb to put all the pieces together right now, but all I know is I need to go kill this guy. So he goes down to like some surplus store, and he gets a lot of tubing to use as tourniquets. He gets hacksaws, and he gets razor wire and all this stuff, and he goes back to the farm and sets all these traps in the woods.
Wait. I really enjoy that he actually goes out of his way to get the gloves to be able to handle the razor wire. Anyway, sorry.
That's funny. He says, I got mitts, and then I bring my bare hands. And so he sets all these traps in the woods, and then he just throws a Molotov cocktail through the window, and Kevin just leaps out effortlessly like some leaping frog or something, and he just starts dancing around, dodging all of Marv's bullets, does a few backflips over the razor wire, and Marv can't believe how silent this guy is. He's like, no wonder he was able to get in and kill Goldie without me knowing. But Marv ends up getting the upper hand by cuffing his wrists and punching him. And when it's kind of a neat shot where he's got him by the wrist, and Kevin is just like cross-eyed looking at it, like he can't fathom what's going on. And then Marv just like punches him unconscious. And when he wakes up, he's sitting in front of the tree, and Marv's talking about how tough this guy is. He didn't say a peep. He doesn't scream. And the camera eventually pulls out to reveal that Marv has amputated all 4 of his limbs. And he's like, what's going to happen when your dog comes along? He's like, oh, what do you know? And the dog comes along and starts eating. And that's where the effect does this neat thing where it goes from the black and white live action photography to just cartoon silhouette. So you see them in white with the rest of the forest in the background in black as the dog is just eating and getting its fill. And yeah, at one point, Marv does hit Goldie's twin sister and knocks her unconscious because he doesn't want her there when he mutilated Kevin. But which I guess is kind of weird because Marv was like, yeah, I don't hurt girls, but then he just hits her upside the face. I'm like, Jesus. But so he kills Kevin, cuts his head off, and this is where he goes to seek out Cardinal Rourke. And this is the first time we're hearing about Cardinal Rourke, and he's supposedly super powerful. He says he could have ran for president but wanted to be a clergyman instead. He got his brother elected to the Senate and is the most powerful man and all this, and yet Marv just effortlessly goes upstairs to the to Cardinal Rourke's office or whatever, and he just brings
May I interrupt you to stop interrupting you? I actually have to let my dog out. If you'll just allow me to mute myself. If you'll continue.
So he takes Kevin's severed head, and Rourke's talking like, what was this about? He brings him the head, and he's like, oh shit. And he's like, oh, you killed Rourke. Oh, but they were all whores. They don't really matter. Blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, you might as well say your goodbyes to Kevin while you can for what I'm gonna do to you. And he grabs him by the head, and he starts squeezing really hard. And Rourke, I should say, is played by Rutger Hauer, another great casting. And Marv kills him and gets arrested. Oh, and I should mention that Frank Miller had a cameo as a a priest who Marv goes to confide in at one point, and when he mentions who he's looking, whose death he's trying to avenge, then the priest calls her a whore. Marv killed the priest, of course. So Marv gets caught, and they make him. They're trying to make him plead guilty to all of the murders that Kevin committed, as well as plead guilty to the murders of Kevin and Rourke. He won't do it. They beat him up. He still won't do it. But then the DA comes in and threatens to have Marv's mother killed, and so Marv breaks his arm in 3 places, but signs the confession anyway. And when it comes time to execute him, the priest is trying to read last rites. He's like, "Come on, hurry up!" Marv's like, "Hurry it up! I ain't got all night." So then they throw the switch, and Marv gets electrocuted, and they think he's dead. And he just starts laughing, coughing up a bunch of blood. He's like, "Is that the best you could do, you pansies?" And then they fry him again. And he did mention that they gave him a pretty damn good steak for his last meal too. So that is actually one of my favorite storylines of these 2 films, because Marv, again, is a great protagonist. I love how he's just going to take any beating that he can. He doesn't care. He doesn't mind that Goldie was using him, because he's like, "Oh, she's a goddess and gave me a great night." And so I really like that story, Cannibal Kevin especially, because it was really in the spirit of this being very cartoonish. As Scott said, it is a very cartoonish idea, because it's never really explained why Kevin is living at the Rourke's farm, or what the nature of this friendship is, or what the association is with Rourke and with Kevin and the Cardinal Rourke. But it's interesting. It feels like there might be more to that. I'm not sure. I haven't read all the stories. But that's the first one. So that was a really good story. The next one is called The Big Fat Kill, and it begins with Brittany Murphy playing the barmaid, as she's referred to by the girls of Old Town. And this guy who likes to think she's her boyfriend, is knocking on the door, played by Benicio del Toro, Jackie Rafferty. They used a lot of prosthetics for him. I guess it's to make him look like he is in the comic. I'm not sure, because I haven't read the comic. But he's drunk and he's being belligerent. He's got his guys there. He's threatening to beat her up, and inside, and she's talking to him, and we see that she's got a new boyfriend, Clive Owen, playing Dwight McCarthy, who walks out from the back room, and she tells him, "Oh, don't mess with this," and she kind of shoos him away back into the bathroom, and Jackie's like, "I could swear I heard somebody else in there with you," and he's like, "I'm being really generous, because I can knock down this door anytime I please." And so then she starts getting genuinely worried, starts crying, she freaks out, she opens the door, lets him in, and all of his dopey friends come in with him. And he's like, "Oh, you have another boyfriend or something?" And she's like, "Yeah, he's Superman. He just flew in and flew right out when he heard you were coming." And he's like, "Yeah, you shouldn't really fight him like that, princess." They go back and forth for a bit, and he wants her to call all her friends from the bar to come and show them a good time. And she's like, "No, I don't really want to do that. Not happening." So he hits her really hard and knocks her to the ground. And then he says, "I'm going to go into the bathroom. You better change your mind about making those calls." And as she's walking, and as he walks into the back room, one of his buddies turns to her and he's like, "You shouldn't have upset him like that, like you did, being a total dick." And so she just grabs one of the knives that's lying on the floor from the knife block that Jackie knocked down, and she just swipes the knife right at this guy. She says, "You better shut your mouth, or I'm going to cut your little finger off." So in the bathroom, Jackie's there. He's taking a piss, and he's like, "Hey, baby, I don't hear you making those calls." And then Dwight sneaks up right behind him with a straight razor and pulls it right under his eye, like he's about to pop his eye out. And he says, "Hi, I'm Shelley's new boyfriend, and I'm out of my mind." If you ever, which is a great way to introduce yourself. And Jackie keeps quiet. He's like, "You ever bother Shelley or give her shit again, I'm gonna kill you." Blah blah blah. And so Jackie tells him, "You're making a big mistake." And he's like, "Yeah, you made a bigger mistake. You forgot to flush." And so then he grabs him by the head and shoves him down into the toilet and holds him down. And Jackie surprisingly holds onto his cigarette during this time. And eventually he holds him down. And at first I thought he was just going to drown him, because you look at the look in Dwight's eyes as he's just holding him there effortlessly with one hand, as Jackie's like flailing in the toilet. And I thought he was going to die. But then he pulls back at the last second and pulls him out. And
no one dies until it's funny.
Yeah, and then Jackie goes back into the room, and his friends are all looking at him like, "What the hell?" He's like, "Come on, let's go. No questions, no questions." And like a bunch of pathetic 50s lackeys, they all leave. And she's like, "See ya." And then they leave, and she goes back into the room and pokes her head out the window and sees Jackie and them leaving. And Dwight's standing outside on the windowsill. And she's
Did you give a big shout out to the late great Brittany Murphy?
I did. I said, "Yes, Brittany Murphy is the barmaid." And so she's as Shelley, and
well, yeah, but
Dwight.
it kind of hurts. It kind of hurts my heart to see her and just know how she died so young.
Yeah. So then, yeah. So that's true. And I kind of wish she had a bigger role. I like her character. She's a good actress. It would have been nice if she had more to do in this movie.
Yeah.
So she looks up at Dwight. And he's like, "Why are you running with it? What, is this guy your boyfriend or something?" And she's like, "No, he likes to think that he is." He's like, "Well, you better say something. I'm going after him." And he jumps off the roof. And she freaks out and she starts shouting like, "Stop!" And he's like, "I can hear Shelley saying something, but over the sound of the police helicopters, it sounded like she said stop." And I'm thinking, okay, you're narrating that she's saying something that you could tell is really important, but you're not going to take the second to go back up and find out what it is. But he gets down, he jumps into his car, which, by the way...
Oh, wait, hang on. That's an unwarranted criticism.
No, it's definitely warranted, because he
is falling 4 floors.
He's not. No, he jumped down. He could have ran back up, because he could tell she was trying to say something
He's going to run back for a message.
Well, he could tell it was really important, so he should have listened.
In the cacophony, he thought he was hearing his lover say stop. It's dangerous.
No.
But he couldn't be sure.
That's not just that he couldn't be sure. He said he thought she said that, but the fact that he's already aware that he's not sure of what she said, only that it was extremely important when she's jumping, meaning when he got back down, he should have gone back up, but he doesn't. So he goes into his car, which, by the way, is colored a beautiful red, it's like a cherry red. Which is another thing. Sin City has the only thing you see for vehicles are these nice older cars. And Jackie was driving this blue Chevy or teal blue or Chevy. So he takes off and he's driving after Jackie. And Jackie goes to Old Town, and Dwight talks about Old Town and narrates to us that the deal is all the women and the hookers can run Old Town and do what they want. The police have to turn around and go back unless they're there off duty as customers. And if they don't play by the rules, then they got to send them back, but they'll send them back alive and just beat up or whatever. This is how things are in Old Town. The girls run it. So he goes into Old Town and he starts following Jackie. And okay, what's this?
It's Jill.
Right, but you threw it up on the screen, and I'm trying to. Are we going through the comments now?
Yeah, we're just playing fast and loose, Cat.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but I haven't even started with this creep yet. I don't want you to watch it. It'll give you nightmares. Yeah. Yeah, that was from the previous story. Yeah, so that was, so he's following Jackie, and Gail stops him, and Gail's the one who runs Old Town. She's like, "Oh, don't worry, we've been watching this asshole since he arrived." And I'm looking at this, and this is a really great shot, by the way. I like how they're like, how Miho is being tasked with following him, and she's walking slowly along the roofs and looking down as Jackie's driving really slowly, and Becky's walking alongside the car, and Jackie's trying to call her in. He's like, "Hey, I got cash," and she's like, "Nah, not interested, not slinging." And
the Gilmore girl, Alexis Bledel.
Yeah, and so
playing a hooker,
and she's really not interested. And she's really not interested in Jackie. And he's like, "Well, you're not interested to see what I have?" And she's like, "No, I've seen all shapes and sizes, nothing unique. I'm not interested." And I'm surprised that Jackie remains calm, because you could tell he's drunk. He's an asshole. And I thought he was going to pull a gun on her or something and make her get in the car, but he doesn't do that. He's following her along, and his dopey friends are sitting in the back. Eventually, but not for a while. See what happens next. Eventually,
that's when Dwight gets to Old Town and then is like trying to make sure that these guys are taken care of. But then, what's her name? Gwen?
Gail. No, Gail.
Gail. I knew it started with a G. So Gail is there, and it's Rosario Dawson. Now, can I just have a little bit of a segue with you there, Kat?
Yeah.
I recently got my Blu-ray of Clerks 3.
And?
Well, I love it. I bought it when it was on digital, and I bought it when it was on physical. And I adore it. So I went to the local Walmart today, and I bought myself the Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Okay, where are we going with this?
It was $5.
Where are we going with this?
You got to wait till the end.
Well, you keep taking these dramatic pauses. Just get to the end.
So anyway, all I'm saying is that I've watched Clerks 1, or sorry, I've watched Clerks 2 and Clerks 3 and Sin City 1 and Sin City 2. I'm just saying, I've had a lot of Rosario Dawson in my life right now. Please continue.
You stopped the show for 2 minutes to just say you've watched Rosario Dawson movies.
It was hardly 2 minutes, my
Okay,
reactionary friend.
Like I was fucking saying, see, now I can't remember what I was gonna fucking say.
Well,
that's
it
right.
was the rest of the movie.
Gail was giving him shit because he's seeing that barmaid Shelley. I don't know why Gail. The reason Gail doesn't like that is because Gail is in love with Dwight, but apparently she's not equipped to express herself that way. And she just likes to give him shit a lot. And so eventually Jackie does pull a gun on Becky, and she's like, "Oh, you just made the dumbest mistake of your life." Then Miho comes out and attacks. The girls attack. There's a fight scene. Dwight gets involved, and eventually Jackie finds himself cornered. And Jackie's trying to talk his way out of it because he knows something that they don't know, and they keep pushing it. And Jackie seems to think that they know what his secret is, but they actually don't. And so there's this neat trick at one point during the fight where, was it Dwight who fired the gun that got the bullet caught in Jackie's gun so that it would backfire?
Yeah, Miho did that.
Okay, Miho did. Yeah, so Miho fired the gun, and so it got. So Jackie doesn't know that there's a bullet already lodged up the barrel of his chamber, so it's not going to work. And Dwight tries to warn him, but he doesn't listen. He shoots it, and he pulls the trigger, and the hammer just flies back, and the clap gun flies back and right into his forehead, and impales him and falls over dead.
Did you like it when Jackie Boy slipped on his own hand like a banana peel?
Yeah, that was really funny because
that was kind of funny. That was really funny.
That was really funny, and that was a really badass way to die too. And she also slits his throat for good measure. Slices his throat for good measure.
Wait, there's something I don't even know how I'm supposed to say this, but there were swastika blades.
Yeah, that's right. And he got one, and she threw one at him, and yeah, that's right. And he fell. No, he slipped. When he slipped on his hand, he fell and landed on it.
Yeah,
that was funny.
It was, but it's just problematic imagery, is all I'm saying.
Well, I think, was it Miho who had the blade? I think.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of people with ninja stars and stuff, which kind of are shaped that way, just because it does have a more of a, when you fling it.
Do you really want to get into it? I was just making an observation.
No, I'm just saying that I'm not sure if it was a swastika. I can't remember if it was swastika specifically, or if it was just happened to be kind of shaped that way. Because I've seen a lot of ninja stars which look similar to swastikas but aren't actually those.
It looks swastikistic.
Maybe, I can't remember. So because none of those girls struck me as
swastikisters.
Yeah. Yeah. So whatever. So he slips and falls on it. He's dead, and they start and of course they start going through his stuff. And reaching in, they're taking his money, going through his wallet. But then Dwight reaches into his jacket. And he's like, "Oh!" And then it was an atom bomb that hit. And he's narrating it, and then he remembers. He's like, "Yeah, Shelley was trying to save something." And the sound of the helicopters sounded like she said "stop," but she actually said, "He's a cop." And
right.
You see his badge, and this is an interesting point because it's not just that he's a cop. They say that he's a hero cop, Detective Lieutenant Jackie Rafferty. However,
the kind of guy that you find in the papers, and yet none of them know him.
Right, and not only did none of them know him, but he's not featured in any of the other stories for being an alleged hero cop, which I thought would have been interesting to see that.
You can only pay for so much, Benicio del Toro.
I don't know, maybe. Which again, I haven't read the comic, but is the reason he's in a bunch of prosthetics is that to make him look like the character? Or
yes.
I mean, okay, yeah, so I don't know what he looks like. So, they're trying to figure out a plan of what they're going to do. And Becky starts freaking out. She's like, "Oh, it'll go back to the way it used to be with the pimps and the gangs and the rapes and all that." And Gail's like, "None of that shit's gonna happen. All right, cover all this up, goddammit." And so Dwight comes up with a plan, and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna just get me a car that's running well with a huge trunk space, and I'm gonna take him down to the tar pits, and we're gonna get rid of it." And so they give him what he needs. He takes off driving, and he's minding the speed limit. But then we see, to Dwight's point, when he told Jackie earlier that he's out of his mind, we see kind of what he means by that, because as he's driving along, we get to the Quentin Tarantino directed scene, which is Jackie is talking to Dwight, and Dwight acknowledges that he knows Jackie's dead and that he's just imagining this. And Jackie is taunting. Hmm?
Do you think it's somewhat of an homage to American Werewolf in London?
Maybe, except that Jackie and Dwight were never friends.
No. But what I mean in just in terms of that, in terms of what they were replicating, like you also have to keep in mind the era where we have, like, there were 3 movies I think that came out that year. One of them was Grindhouse, and like there is a
Not the year of Sin
camaraderie.
City.
Sorry.
Not the same year as Sin City. Grindhouse is 2 years later.
Then, but it is within the same era, if you will. Will you?
Okay.
Like when there is sort of that sort of directorial writer-director auteur filmography fraternity, and I don't want to say fraternity in a negative way,
Hmm.
but just like when you had just a bunch of dudes who could make whatever kind of movies they wanted.
Okay.
I think it's an interesting time in movie making when the auteurs, the shock jocks. Like, do you think that Robert Rodriguez is a shock jock, or do you think he's an auteur?
More shock jock. He's kind of all over
Tarantino?
the place. Sort of auteur, kind of. That's a whole other conversation, though. What does this have to do with the American Werewolf in London?
Well, no, I was just saying in terms of the directorial style of having a conversation between something that could be supernatural or.
Well, that's definitely a Tarantino thing, but that's also from the comic, though, right? So that's a Frank Miller thing.
I never saw it.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I never read the comic, but if they went out of their way to give Benicio del Toro that much prosthetics to look like the character from the comic, then I'm betting that scene in the car is also from the comic. In which case, that comes from the mind of Frank Miller and is not the result of Robert Rodriguez or Quentin Tarantino.
But they adhered to the story, like they adhered to the storyboards based on wanting to tell that story. Yes.
Right, but if that's what I'm saying, though, if they adhered to the storyboards almost exactly, then that's a recreation of what Frank Miller came up with, more than anything else. So that's what that is. And so Tarantino directs this scene, and it feels totally like a Tarantino type scene. Because Jackie, each time his head falls back, his voice gets more raspy, and it leans forward, and then it gets, which is really funny. And Dwight keeps having to remind Jackie that he's dead, and you're supposed to stay dead. And Jackie's taunting him about the fact that the car's about to run out of gas. He's like, "Those hookers let you down," which is really funny. And I thought, yeah, that is kind of funny that Gail and her girls were too stupid to not check the car to make sure it was ready to go and would actually make the trip, given how urgent it is that this trip of all trips be made. And so the car is running out of gas. He's not sure if they're going to get there. Sure enough, it doesn't really make it to the tar pits. And when he arrives there, he has to push it the last, I think he says 1.5 miles or something like that, but he doesn't get very far because he's attacked by a sniper, an Irish sniper. And we see this gang of Irish guys show up and attack, and Dwight actually dispatches them relatively easily, gets the car further closer to the tar pits to knock in, and then they get attacked again by more Irish gangsters or whatever that have been hired by another crime lord who we'll meet momentarily. And so I believe one of them throws a grenade and the explosion causes the car to actually flip and fall into the tar pits and start sinking. And it knocks Dwight into the tar pits as well.
That sounds right.
Dwight has to be then pulled out, and the girls are there to help. And when he's coming out, trying to climb out of the tar pit, he sees these 2 other Irish guys who are reaching into the back of the car, and one of them severs Jackie's head, and they take it, and they're going to leave, and then Dwight has to go over there and stop him, which he does. Meanwhile, Gail has been kidnapped by Manute, the gang lord, crime lord who hired the Irish people, and he's telling Gail how.
Who plays Manute?
In the first one, it's Michael Clarke Duncan, who's really good in this thing.
He's really good.
He is, and he's got the golden eye, and which we find out how he loses in the sequel, ironically enough. And so he's talking to Gail about how the body of Jackie Rafferty is en route here as we speak. Everything's going to go back to the way it was, but you have the power to decide how many of you suffer or not if you join me now, type of thing. And that doesn't last very long because the room is the gangs there are attacked. But he has these two guys. One of them played by Nicky Cat, who's this like skinhead wearing all
he's
these.
He's got one of them blades on his forehead.
Yeah, and then I couldn't find. I was trying to find out who played his buddy, the shorter actor. I couldn't find out his name. But I recognized him,
but I didn't see him.
I recognized him, and he was funny. And they're having this back and forth, and all of a sudden, Nicky Cat gets shot by this arrow through the window, and it's the girls there trying to save Gale, but they don't succeed in that. They're trying to, and we figure out in this time that Becky is the one who sold out their plan to Manoj because she made a phone call allegedly to her mom, but instead she sold them out, and Gale gives her shit about it. And she's like, "Oh, Gale, you need to stop being so selfish. Plus I needed to look out for my mom. She needed protection." He's like, "Oh, bullshit. You did it for the money," type thing. And Dwight, meanwhile, having been rescued from the pits by the other girls, says, "Well, you've been sold out. We got to find out who did it. We got to kill the rat, and we got to kill Matt Newton, these guys." But Dwight is the one who actually comes up with a plan. And they do this really neat whip pan with the camera going around Dwight as he's talking to Miho. And he's like, "I tell her exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it." And they come up with like this really great plan, and we're not really sure what it is. And eventually we cut to this alley somewhere back in Sin City, or in Old Town rather. And Manut's got all of his guards with him with their guns, and he's got Gale, and he's holding her there. And Dwight's standing on top of like a ledge of the building across the way, and they're
like
talking.
Kathy Griffin.
Yeah, and he holds up the head of Jackie, and he's like, "Well, it's over now. It doesn't matter. You have the head. The ball is in motion. There's nothing you could do. Blah blah blah." But then Becky starts freaking out. She's like, "Wait, there's tape over Jackie's mouth. There was no tape before. Why is there tape over his mouth?" And then Dwight just throws the head at him, and then we see that there's, of course, a grenade inside the head. It blows up and knocks all Manute and his guys to the ground. And then all of the girls from Old Town suddenly surface, popping up from behind all the rooftops. And you have just a massive gun battle. And Gale climbs up next to Dwight.
It's more of a slaughter than anything else.
Yeah, and then and Manute freaks out, and they all just start shooting like crazy. And it becomes very comic booky at that point in terms of looking like more of a comic panel, the way the framing goes and the shots go.
I argue it's been that way the entire time.
It has, but it felt even more so with some of the way that, because unlike where everything has a normal fluid movement, when the shooting starts, it's almost like the people are standing still and the camera's moving through each, like zooming around through panels. Like
but I like the strobe light effect. I've been in a club.
That's what I mean. It works, and so they all get massacred, and that's the climax of it. And Dwight shares a kiss with Gale, and so that's the storyline of the big fat kill. And I don't know for the life of me how Becky escaped that slaughter, but she did.
I do. She got shot in the arm, and then she rolled underneath like you know how there's an indented like window in a basement apartment kind of thing. And in Sin City, it would have had masonry, so she sort of rolls under that, and that's how she hides out from the hail of bullets. I always paid attention to that, and so yes, it does happen.
Okay, so so that makes sense now. So this story, I liked it. I remember not liking it that much when I first saw it, because the thing that my hang up with it was the fact that, okay, these girls are in Old Town. This is the deal. You know, they can't kill cops. They have to send them back, blah, blah, blah. And like Jackie says, "Oh, those hookers let you down." I'm like, this is the single most important thing they've ever had to do. They don't bother checking that the car has a tank of gas. I'm like, that kind of, and plus it's like, okay, they're dressed in lingerie. They're trying to be badass, but they're still interested in just, you know, being prostitutes, even though they have run of the entire Old Town. Don't they have another way, like a drug racket or something? So I thought that was always a little weird, but okay. Again, well cast. It was a fun story. I admit,
but the women of Old Town are in charge of all vice in Old Town.
Right, but the only vice we ever see in Old Town in these films is pretty much them being hookers.
Yeah, but you don't think they smoke weed?
What?
You don't think they smoke weed?
I didn't say they don't. I said that the only thing that either of these films shows girls of Old Town doing is being hookers. And I thought,
well, and to be fair,
like this. What?
To be fair, a lot of these movies are like, there's violence, but most of the violence is about people who peddle drugs. So they,
I get it. I just meant that they don't, like, for them to be running all of Old Town, they never really seem as powerful as, say, as the Rourkes who are running Sin City. And it's like, if everybody, even the Rourkes, give the women leeway in Old Town because of the truce, then I would just expect to see them living more of a high life than just dressed in lingerie, walking along the rooftops, just looking to sell themselves to whatever creep comes around the corner. And so I saw this kind of weird, but so that was that storyline. I was sad to see Manute have such a
Is Old Town just like sex mall?
That's basic. Well, that's the only thing they portray it as in both these films. I mean,
like, did they have convenience stores in Old Town?
I don't know, maybe. So I was upset that Manute had such a small role in this one because I really liked Michael Clarke Duncan in that role. He was so good. Yeah, he was cool. So then we get to the third storyline, which is not so much the third storyline as it's the latter 2/3 of
the conclusion.
The latter 3/4, I should say, the bulk of the Yellow Bastard storyline, which we find out that Hartigan, while recovering in jail, recovering in the hospital, Nancy comes to see him, and she's like, "Oh, they're trying to fix you up for this. I told them you didn't do it, but they're not even interested in doing a rape kit on me, and blah blah blah. I'm a virgin." I'm thinking it's kind of odd to hear an 11-year-old talking like that, but okay. And he ends up being transferred to prison, and they're trying to get him to sign a confession saying he was responsible for all the child murders, but he won't do it. And for 8 years, he won't confess, and they just keep him in this cell, I guess, not having gone to trial, just in a county or something for 8 years. And he keeps receiving letters from Nancy that keep him going. And finally, after 8 years...
Senator Rourke makes it his mission in life to make sure that... What's his name? Hartigan?
Hartigan.
He makes it his mission in life to make sure that Hartigan lives long enough to suffer.
I know that, but I mean that he doesn't bother getting trumped up evidence to just take him to trial and send him to prison. He just keeps him in limbo, either at county jail or wherever it is that he's at. Because it's kind of neat, because all you see is all this jet black, and there's this one cell, and he's in there. We have no idea where this is, but they keep him there for 8 years until he signs a confession. And and the letters from Nancy keep him going and inspire him not to sign the confession. And the police commissioner's there beating the shit out of him, trying to get the confession. And finally, he signs it. I can't remember why he signed it, actually.
He says, oh, my stars. Okay. So when Hartigan is in his singular cell, the letters from Cordelia, which is the name that Nancy has been using to send letters, they stop coming. And so then one day, an envelope from Cordelia arrives, and it has the index finger of what looks like to be a woman of the age of 19. And so Hartigan starts going all crazy. And he's like, well, she's in trouble. It's all no. So he says, I have to get out so I can protect Nancy. If I don't, wow, it's his primary goal.
This is an interesting point too, because you're right. So he figures that out. He signs the confession, but he's not curious as to why they let him go, because they're not just having him confess to attacking Senator Rourke's son. They're having him confess to all these other child murders that Senator Rourke's son has committed. So it's like, in what universe would you pleading guilty after sitting in a cell for 8 years, would you just get released, lickety split? But he's not suspicious about that at all. So he goes into town and he goes to the bar.
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Time served?
Not for something that heinous.
Okay. No, good point. Good point.
And he actually does bring that up in a minute as well. He goes into the bar, and we see Marv there. And this is the first indication that these stories are being told out of order, because Marv is there watching Nancy do her thing and having a good time. And Hartigan's walking in, and he asked one of the, I can't remember who the actress is playing the bartender. She was somebody as well. I can't remember. She pops up a couple times in the film. And he's like, I'm looking for Nancy or Cordelia. And she's like, oh, you're just in time. She's just getting started. And you see her up there, Jessica Alba, playing the adult Nancy, dressed in like these frilly leather boots and lingerie. And she's doing this pole dance. And Hartigan finally gets it. And he doesn't notice at first, but the yellow bastard, who is Senator Rourke's disfigured son, is sitting at one of the tables watching. And Hartigan finally realizes it. He's like, oh, of course, you stupid bastard. They let me out so that way they can get to Nancy. And he's like, I gotta get out of here. Hope she doesn't notice me. And he turns to leave, and she notices him at the absolute last second. And it's a great bit where she runs and leaps off the stage right into Hardigan's arms, just clasping around him with her legs and her arms. And Marv and everybody just kind of looks at Hardigan. And Marv's just like, huh, and he turns back to his cigar. Like, some people just get lucky. And he tries to tell Nancy, no, we gotta go. This isn't safe. He's like, well, let me get ready. I'll be right out. And so she runs into the back, and then Hardigan looks behind him, and the yellow bastard's gone. He's like, oh shit. So they go outside. They get into Hardigan's car, or no, they're gonna go into Hardigan's car. She's like, no, we're gonna take mine. And he's like, let me drive. She's like, no, I'm the only one who can get this baby moving on the road. So she gets in the car, and they start driving, and they notice they're being followed. And Hardigan's like, keep it on the road, keep it on the road. And the yellow bastard leans out the window and starts shooting guns at him, and they're firing back. And eventually she does this really slick move where she swings the car around, and the camera does like this whip pan right around to the taillight, which is really cool. And the yellow bastard has since crashed his car. Hardigan and Nancy go up to investigate. He's got his gun. He sees the bloody yellow trail, the trail of yellow blood, I should say. But there's sirens coming. He's like, oh, we can't stay here. We gotta go. And so they get back into her car and start driving off. And he's like, we're rid of him, but I still smell the little bastard everywhere. And they go to the seedy motel, and they'll hide inside there for a bit. And he goes in to take a shower. Or before he takes the shower, she keeps hitting on him. And he's like, this is really creepy. You shouldn't be doing this. I'm old enough to be your grandfather, which is true. And it is kind of creepy that she sees him in that way. And it's like, that's kind of sad and creepy. And so but being the good hero cop that he is, he's not going to take that offer. And so he goes into the shower, and then the yellow bastard shows up and punches him out. He comes to, and he's stripped, and he's hanging by a noose from the ceiling with his feet barely standing on top of the coffee table. And the yellow bastard's sitting back on the couch with Nancy. And Hardigan tells her that no matter what he does to you, don't scream, Nancy, don't scream. And it's like, yeah, we were stumped all those years trying to figure out who was writing all those damn letters. Yeah, she's a little old for my taste, admittedly, but I think I'll make an exception this time. It was creepy and disgusting, and as repugnant as they can make him. And he does look a little bit different from the way he does in the comics. He has like this he has the same round head, but he has more of a narrower nose, almost like a cartoon, like a more cartoonish character, whereas this guy's got more of a bulbous smash nose.
And I'm a fan of, like, this is the one Sin City comic that I've read, and this is the one that I have the most emotional connection to. And so I would say I was happy with the representation. It was a little cartoony, but it was still grotesque enough for me to be like, nope, still fucked up.
Yeah. So he escapes with Nancy, and then these two other guys, the same two thugs show up to take care of Hardigan. But of course, Hardigan escapes and kills them, and races out to the farm. But he keeps reminding himself in the classic, narrating everything like a 40s hard-boiled detective does, that he's got to be careful. He can't run in all Sir Galahad type thing. Robert Rodriguez makes a cameo, I believe, here as one of the SWAT guys guarding the farm. And,
I saw it in the second one too. It was great. I loved both of the Robert Rodriguez.
And he sneaks up behind him, and Hardigan just cuts his throat with a knife. He's like, horrible way to kill a man, but it's quiet. And he starts moving in. And as he's creeping along outside, we see a shot of Cannibal Kevin inside his room, just reading a book, oblivious to what's going on. And I thought that was neat. So it's like, oh, okay, so Kevin's still alive in this storyline.
Pardon me.
And so out in the barn, the yellow bastard's taken off his coat, and he's got this like pot belly, but he also looks, it's weird, like his ribs are all protruding like he's emaciated, but he's got this huge like beer belly, which is really weird. And he's beating Nancy he's whipping her, and she's not going to cry. And she taunts him, and she's like, Hardigan was right. You can't get it up unless I scream. And he's like, oh, you old bastard. And he gets all angry. He's like, oh, you're going to scream. And he pulls out this big, like, Bowie knife type thing. But then Hardigan shows up and attacks. And once again, he like collapses because he's having like a heart attack type thing. And the bastard thinks he's safe. And he's like, haha, you can't do it. Look at you once again. You can't even lift that cannon. And he's like, oh, watch me. And it turns out that it was a trick. He was faking the heart attack, and he rips up the gun and shoots the bastard a couple of times. And he's like, I take his weapons, both of them. And this time you see him use his bare hands to castrate, to rip the guy's balls off. And it's like,
oh my God, Jesus. It's so grotesque.
It's so gross. And then he keeps them in his hand as he pummels his head in until his head just matches in. And there's eventually this really great aerial shot of Nancy and Hardigan walking away. And she's like, I didn't scream, just like you told me. And he puts his coat over her. And as they're walking out of the barn, you see the aerial shot as the bastard's laying there in his boxer shorts and his head is just just gone as there's just yellow blood everywhere. It's such a gorgeous looking shot. I loved it. And as they're walking away, she's like, "Oh, we're gonna have." She's naive and thinks that they're gonna have a future together. And everything's gonna be fine. But then he narrates over that he's aware that, of course, Senator Rourke is never gonna let this go, and they're gonna keep hunting her as long as I'm alive. And he's like, "You go ahead. I gotta clean up the scene and take care of it. Don't worry. Go, go." And so she runs off, and he thinks about it, and he's like, "Yeah, they're never gonna stop hunting her as long as I'm alive." And he collapses to his knees and he says, "Old man dies, young woman lives, fair trade." And they cut back to that cartoon silhouette as he shoots himself in the head. Great ending to that story. Such a hero. And then we cut back to the final bit, which is Becky at the hospital, her arms in a sling. She's talking to her mom. She's like, "Oh no, Mom, it's okay. It's just a clean break. It'll heal. It'll be fine." And she goes into the elevator. She's like, "Gotta go, Mom." And because we see the hitman, Josh Hartnett, dressed as a doctor. I guess he just knew she was going to be in there. He says, "Hey, Becky." And he whips out his pair of cigarettes, which I thought was funny for being in disguise as a doctor. And he's going to offer you cigarettes. Like, that's not suspicious at all.
4 out of 5 doctors recommend Cools for the smooth, great taste.
She's like, "Here, Becky, care for a smoke?" And then the movie ends. And I'm like, I love that ending. So that movie, I mean, I think that one of the reasons it was so successful is because those comics, well, a lot of people in the comic space know about them. A lot of casual fans didn't. So this just seemed like a really fresh spin on the noir hard-boiled detective genre. It's making it more theatrical by having like superhuman people like Marv and weirdos like Cannibal Kevin and creeps like the Yellow Bastard and classic uber powerful politician types like the Rourkes and classic hard-boiled detective heroes like Hardigan. And then the big fat kill, the way that the women are actually more badass than just the damsels in distress like you used to have in those old 40s stories. So I think that all just kind of came together in like the perfect storm to make what was a really great movie. It was made on a $40 million budget and made $187 million, which in 2005 it's pretty good for that type of movie, because again, it's a hard R Saturday morning cartoon, which is probably part of where the rift is, because like you said, it has the classic appeal of a Saturday morning cartoon for kids, but it's more R-rated skewed, so it's like somewhere in the middle. So it was a very successful movie. I liked it a lot, and like everybody else, I assumed that Rodriguez was going to ride that wave and make the next one as his next film. And because Frank Miller expressed almost immediately when that movie came out that he wanted to do another one. And it's like, oh yeah. And then he didn't do it. And as a result of waiting, right. But I mean, he waited 9 years to the point that nobody was interested anymore. And
I have a rapid fire opinion and question.
Yes.
Okay. When did the 300 come out?
March 2007, and this one came out April 2005.
So this laid the groundwork for.
I think 300 has a very different style to it than Sin City,
but in terms of the technical manufacturing, somewhat similar, would you not say? This is where we get to the boring part, and I'm going to ask about cinematography and shit.
Sort of, but 300 is a lot more sloppy than Sin City.
Well, so which do you prefer? Like, these are
Sin
two.
City.
These
Sin
are
City,
two.
100%.
Okay, fine. Wow, done. Never mind.
I did not. Here's the thing. I did not like 300 as a story or the comic. I thought it was I thought it was style over substance. I didn't care for the story. I mean, historically, if they were to make a real like history movie about the actual event, that would be cool. This the 300 movie I just found was way more style over substance and story. I didn't care for it at all.
Well, that movie, oddly enough, made me gay for like 48 hours.
That was a Zack Snyder film as well. This is Robert Rodriguez.
Zack Snyder films usually make me gay for about 48 hours.
Relevance none. Okay, so
objection.
What are your thoughts overall on the first Sin City film?
Okay. First things first. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. We have been judging the Tarantino movies not based upon them being reflective of the filmography of Tarantino, but we've been kind of putting them against everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of want to give Rodriguez the same credit.
Yeah.
We're using the same theme music. I think he deserves the same credit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say Sin City is probably a 7 bullets.
For me, it's 8 bullets.
Bingo. Okay, so we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I just really liked this movie. It was fresh. It was different. I'd never heard of it before. I remember I was in a media arts class in high school at the time, and my friend, who was a couple years ahead of me, talked about. He's like, "Yeah, you ever heard of Sin City? This is right up your alley." And he showed me some of the comics. I'm like, "Wow, this is awesome." And then I remember when I got the DVD, I can't remember what store I got it at, but it came with like a comic, one of the Marv comics as a free tie-in. I think it was only one issue of the comic, though. It wasn't the whole story. So, but it was cool. And I got into reading the Sin City stuff for a while. I read them from a friend, I believe. I never bought them. Yeah, those are really cool. And so I love this movie. I wish he had done a sequel a lot sooner, but I still really liked it. So the style, the cast, everything was just wow, like really spot on. And I just wanted to see more Marv a lot because Marv was like my favorite. Because again, I like that he's superhuman, but they don't really tell you why. Same with Hardigan. It's like on the one hand, Hardigan's ready to kill over at a heart attack at any given moment, but he's always
because
but he takes
good
all these
wins, Cat.
It does, sort of, but it has these tragic endings that you get in noir as well. I mean, Mars, in a sense, it should be tragic because he was executed, but even though he's a hero, but because he's laughing and having a fun time of it, I didn't really feel that bad about it. But but I still love that film. So, yeah, that's 8 out of 10 for me.
Phil says that it's an 8.
He says 8 is a fair ranking.
And then Jill, hey Jill, says Sin City was like a creepy mystery novel. Cheesy mystery novel with violent melodrama, great vocabulary, and complete despair, where one terrible event bleeds into another, both goofy and salient. Did you say salient?
She did.
Nice.
She gives it 7 bullets.
Bingo, bango. I like it a lot. Good work, Jill. That's thoughtful.
But wait, Jill said, oh yeah, so then Jill says for part 2 she gave 4 bullets, but ups it to 5 bullets for Joseph Gordon-Levitt being cute.
Fair enough. That's
and Phil says, yeah, the sequel gets a 5 for me. It's pretty forgettable. So yeah, it's nice to hear what they have to say about it before we jump into it. So the sequel,
no, let's just go. Let's go.
Yeah, so I didn't even know the sequel was coming until like a month before it came out. That's how bad the marketing was for this movie. I remember I was working late on a Friday night. I got out. My friend and I drove up to Grass Valley. We saw it at this old-timey theater at 10 o'clock at night on opening night. It was fun. But the movie itself, so the film opens with the long... What?
First things first.
You said you wanted to jump into it. Now you're already stopping me.
Yeah, because I have context, Cat.
Then why did you want me to start?
All right, fine. You go.
No, you go. You already stopped me. Go.
You know what? You're going to be so disappointed when you hear what I'm going to say.
Say it anyway. It's too late.
Ladies and gentlemen, this movie has a lot of naked Eva Green.
Jesus fucking Christ, Scott.
Anyway, okay. After you, please go ahead.
So the movie opens, and I think this is probably to its detriment, with the best story for me, in my opinion. It's called Just Another Saturday Night, in which Marv, who keeps alluding to the fact that he's very confused in the first one, finds himself awake with a bunch of dead bodies around. He has no idea how it happened, and he goes through the night basically trying to figure out what happened and piecing it back together. And at one point, he came upon these frat boys torturing these homeless people, and he came in and killed them, and he gets pursued by the cops and kills some of them at one point. It's basically just Marv going around having a really violent, brawling Saturday night and watching Nancy dance and all of that, and it's like really fun. It's just another Saturday night. So,
it feels like I kind of want to. I really enjoyed watching the sequel much more today.
Okay,
I thought it was really, really good. And so I do not know why they opened it with Marv, yet I do understand why they opened it with Marv, because Marv was the most fun character from the first one, right?
Yeah, and they want to hook you. Yeah.
Exactly. But I thought that was a bad choice. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so then the first half of, or the next story they present in the first half, which is Johnny the Gambler, and he basically goes into this casino. He takes a coin. He does these little fun tricks with the coins, and gets one of the girls to walk up to him in the casino, and he's like, blow on this one for good luck. Marcy, she blows on it for good luck, and sure enough, he gets all trip aces or whatever, and he gets all the coins. He's like, oh, how'd you do that? He's like, let's go to another one. And he starts walking down, wanting to select the right slot machine, and he says, here, kiss the coin this time. So she kisses it, and he gets even more money. And he's excited. He's like, come on, baby, let's go out for a night on the town. And so they go out, and he decides that he wants to go play cards with Senator Rourke. And he goes into the bar where Nancy's dancing, and Nancy's actually in the back. And the kid goes to see Rourke. And again, like I mentioned earlier, he opens the door. The security guard isn't really watching or paying attention to who's there. He just waits for him to walk in before he decides to frisk him. And he sees that they're playing cards. You got the crooked police commissioner there and some other guards, and Rourke is willing to let.
You know what I liked? The crooked police, like, okay, so one of the guys who's playing at the table, it's the guy who beat the fuck out of Hartigan.
Yeah, it's the same guy, the lieutenant or the commissioner.
Oh, it was crazy. And because it's somewhat of a prequel, it's like you see him before he was broken into being a sadistic bastard.
That's right. That's true. Because we get to that. And I, of course, knew that actor, Jude. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I knew him from 24. It was on that show a lot. He was cool. So seeing him as kind of a bad guy was kind of, oh, wow. So he's there, and so they let Johnny sit down. He wants to play cards. And, of course, Johnny has the best hand every time. Cleans out Rourke, embarrasses him, leaves, and the lieutenant, the commissioner guy, says to him, hey, look, kid, take your winnings and you get the hell out of here and don't come back. I can't protect you. He's like, well, then why are you a cop? And he just walks away. And I'm thinking,
that was dope.
That's a great comeback. But at the same time, I like that he was kind of looking out for the kid. And so Johnny leaves. They take off.
Also, wait. Can we stop for a second? Joseph Gordon-Levitt is fucking sharp as shit in this.
Yeah. And so he is. He's super confident, super suave. You know that he already knows what's probably going to happen. He's like Danny Ocean. Yeah, and except he already has a plan. Plan of action. He knows what to do. So he takes Marcy out for a night on the town. And when
spoilers, he loses.
Right, because these guys show up, and he's like, "Come on, Marcy, you got to get out of the way." He's like, "What's this about?" And he attacks them. And she's like, "What was that all about?" And she's like, naive, not really picking up on what it is. And then a car pulls up to pick him up. So he gets in the car, and Rourke is there, and he's the biggest sore loser little bitch you can imagine. And he gets out these pair of like bolt cutters or pliers or whatnot. He's like, "Oh, you never want to embarrass me like that in front of my friends." And so they break each of his fingers with it. And he's like, "Oh, you're gonna kill me now?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna do something far worse. I'm not even done with you. You're gonna be far worse than that." So then they instead just push him out of the speeding car and take his money, take the winnings from him as well. And then he's lying there on the ground, and he gets up, and he's determined to avenge himself. And I actually thought this was a pretty good hook for the story because, like you said, Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays the character so sharp and so suave like Danny Ocean that you just believe, okay, he's already got an end game in mind. I don't know what it is. Like, he knew this was going to happen. Maybe not to this degree, but like there's something up his sleeve. And so that was a good hook. I liked the beginning of that. Even though on the whole, that story for the first part wasn't as endearing, but it's like, I'm excited for where that's going to go. Then I
kind of saw him as being the Josh Hartnett of this movie.
Basically, yeah. And so we then seek into a story they tell in its entirety, the title that the film takes its name from, A Dame to Kill For. This is, again, a prequel story because Dwight has not yet had his accident, so they had cast a different actor. It's Josh Brolin this time. I don't feel he plays the character the same way at all. It doesn't. I mean, aside from looking and sounding different, nothing about him seems the same. Like in the Big Fat Kill,
I disagree.
In the Big Fat Kill, he introduces himself to Jackie, telling him I'm out of my mind, and you totally buy it from how he plays everything in that story. Here, he just seems like, a sucker in puppy love who's willing to do anything to save this woman, like everybody is apparently in this storyline. But he didn't seem like a psycho or somebody who was a little off like Dwight was in The Big Fat Kill. He just seemed completely different to me. Like, to the point you might as well have said it's a different character.
But Dwight in Big Fat Kill is pre-surgery. right?
Post, I believe. This story here is a prequel because he gets his face all cut up and bandaged in this story. So Big Fat Kill is
that's how he gets to look like Clive Owen.
Yeah, that's the post surgery. That explains an appearance change, but why would he become more of an unhinged psycho than that? What?
How would you feel if you had your entire physicality changed? Would you be okay with it? Would you be like, all right?
If you came out like Clive Owen, then yeah, I think you'd not all cut up and mangled or anything like that. Then yeah, I think I'd be pretty happy. But
I disagree. I think that's superficial. But then again, so is this series. So whatever.
Yeah, I just don't find this take of the Dwight character appealing at all. He's just really boring to me. And the story is basically that
I find Josh Brolin very charismatic.
I do in other things, it's not in here. So in this role, he's had this past relationship with Ava, played by Ava Green, and she's introduced wearing this blue dress, and she basically says she needs help, this abusive husband situation, blah blah blah. So he decides that he's going to help, and we also see a one-off thing with him where he's secretly photographing this girl having a liaison with Ray Liotta, who's like a politician or something, and she's like, "Oh, you deserve
Ray Liotta."
It was, and she's like, "Oh, you deserve this. You don't need to worry about your wife." Blah blah blah. And he's like, "Yeah, I do deserve this." And he's, taking off his clothes, and they're secretly being photographed this whole time. So when Ava shows up, she basically wants him to do the same. She's like, "Come to place, Dwight. You'll see all the bruises, everything. It's so horrible." And so Dwight goes up to the mansion that night, and he secretly is taking pictures of her in the pool. And he's like, "This is odd. I don't see any bruises. I don't see any swelling. This is kind of weird. What's going on?" But then he gets cornered by security. And the security is Manute, the same guy from the Big Fat Kill. But unfortunately, because of
he's got both eyes.
Yes, because this is a prequel, and unfortunately, because of the death of Michael Clark Duncan, because they waited too damn long.
Michael Clark Duncan died.
They cast Dennis Haysbert instead, who still does a good job, but not.
He does a great job.
Yeah, but not as much as Michael Clark Duncan.
Ving Rhames was unavailable.
Yeah, and so she decides she tells Manute to kind of spare him. He decides to fight. He beats the shit out of him.
They could not get Delroy Lindo.
Yeah, they couldn't get that. They beat the shit out of him. She comes back, says, "Oh, you have to help me," blah blah blah. And he falls for it again. He goes to the house, and this time he finds her husband. He's like, "I don't know what she's done or what's going on, but I have to save her," type thing. And the husband pleads ignorance, played by Martin Sokas actually. And he's like, "Oh, come on."
Can you imagine Denzel Washington playing Manute? That would be awesome.
Maybe, yeah. So
anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting. I'm just recasting Manute.
So Dwight kills the husband, Damien, and then Ava steps in. She's like, "How does it feel to kill an innocent man?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" She reveals that, "Oh, you just made me a very rich man, Dwight." And then she brings Manute down to beat the shit out of him again. And he's like, "Oh, I don't even know if I'm still falling. Whatever. The first one feels like an atom bomb between my legs, and then a car crashed right to my face." As Manute beat the shit out of him again, but then he finds himself back home, and he's like, or he goes home, and he's like, "Why'd they return my car? What's going on?" Or no, that was after he got home from the car. So basically, he realizes that she took him for a ride, and he realizes that her husband was also taken for a ride. Her husband saw her as the Princess Bride. I saw her as a damsel in distress. She's a goddess. Nobody's going to betray her. And to that end,
But I like that devotion from Manute.
And to that end, they cast Jeremy Piven and Christopher Maloney as the two detectives who come to her house to investigate the murder of her husband. And she's playing the victim. And, Dwight, my husband beat me up, all this type of stuff. And Dwight, blah, 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 you have to save me. And it's funny because Christopher Maloney, of course, known for playing the detective on Law & Order SVU, is listening to her basically telling the same type of story that he hears a million times on that TV show, except this time he gets totally sucked into it and enamored with her. And so when Jeremy Piven starts making jokes about how hot she is, and he's like, "I'm a married man, Bob. Don't say anything more, Bob. Shut up, Bob." He's making fun of her. He goes home that night, and she calls him saying, "Oh, I don't feel safe, Bob. Or don't feel safe, whatever the guy's name. You come and sit." And so he comes back to see her anyway, and of course they sleep together. And then she's asking for updates on the investigation. He says, "Well, Dwight has gone to Old Town."
Well, hang on. Wait, hang on. So, no, this entire thing with Christopher Maloney and Jeremy Piven is all like sizzle and no steak.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, there's no I don't know. if it were part of something, like if they were the cops that were involved with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I'd be fine. But like they just show up so that the siren can prove that she can turn a man. Like, what about Agnes or whatever her name is? He's a married man. Like, I don't even understand. It's not about the city. It's almost like the city is a haunted house of noir.
Well, that's the idea. That's the idea. She has that allure. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And the Marv, of course, that's right. I forgot to mention the reason he managed to get back in and kill the husband was because he teamed up with Marv. And of course, Marv's a sucker also for any time a woman's in trouble. And so they broke in there effortlessly, Marv killed all the guys to let him get to the husband and kill him. And so, but Dwight gets so injured by this because he's attacked by Manute. He doesn't get his eye ripped out. He gets all the skin and closure and bone around the eye ripped out. So his eyes is totally exposed. And Marv has to save him. And I love the fact that Manute's car, which they steal, is a Tucker. A 1948
nice.
Tucker.
I didn't notice.
Yes, it's a 1948 Tucker. I looked at that immediately. Like, oh, badass! It's a Tucker. And so they steal the Tucker, and they're being pursued by the cops, but they flee into Old Town. But a rookie
Cat, would you like to explain to the people what a Tucker is? They don't know.
A Tucker was a highly advanced car for its day, made by an independent guy. He tried to sell the plans to other car companies. They wouldn't do it, so he built it on his own. When it turned out he may have when they realized he actually had something good, they turned against him in the courts and everything. And basically, I can't remember what the legal thing was, patent wars or whatever it was about, and he eventually got sued out of business and went bankrupt, but he never got rid of the patents. So there's only like the 50 that they made or whatever in the world. So fuck you, Ford and all the other car companies who pushed him out of business, because that's why we don't have Tuckers anymore.
It's a rare, advanced car, and I highly value anybody who can point one out. Thank you.
Yeah,
that is your DeLorean.
Yeah, it's a Tuck, beautiful. I've seen I've seen a couple of them in person as well. They're really
all right.
nice.
Stay on target. We're talking about.
So I was
Sin City. We don't have Tuckers. We're all at.
So she
we're
tries
Tuckered.
At one point, after she even goes to Dwight's apartment at one point earlier in the story, and he tries to get her away, but she uses her allure to have sex with him, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm a slave to her," blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So we see how she's that, like you said, she's the siren who has that effect on everyone. But now that Marv has fled to Old Town, and we notice that there's a rookie cop, and Dwight surmises it must be a rookie chasing them, because the rookies would not go that deep into Old Town. They should know the rules. And I guess even though in the first one it's specified they send back cops alive, I guess they're allowed to kill them if they don't follow the rules, I guess, because they just blow them up with a bazooka and without any care.
No. When I watched it, because I watched these back to back. I watched and it was like, no, that's against the rules. That's against the truce. You cannot blow up the cop car.
Exactly. But that's why I was wondering, were they allowed to do that because the cop was blatantly ignoring the truce by just policing Old Town? Maybe. I don't know. But while this is going on...
No, they say explicitly in the first movie. And it's like, you can beat them up. You can do what the fuck... Pardon me. Wait, it's my channel. You can do the fuck what you want with them. And, but you have to send them home alive. That's the only rule. And that is the truce.
Yeah, so I don't know what the deal was here. But anyway, Marv drags Dwight out of the car, and the girls don't recognize him at first. And Gail walks up, and she's wearing this like red jacket with this,
weird helmet.
Like lingerie, and this helmet. And it's like, geez, what the hell, Gail? And she's like, you got 10 seconds to tell us why you...
Gail?
It's like, you've got 10 seconds to tell us why you're bringing these cops in Old Town. And she pulls out 2 pistols, and then Dwight leans forward. He's like, Gail. And this is when we find out that Gail's madly in love with Dwight.
But don't forget that, like, Dwight has, like, a fucking giant, like, he's got an eyeball exposed and shit.
Yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned earlier that Manute, like, ripped all the skin out around his eye. And
it's crazy. It's gross.
Yeah, and so they're going to take care of him. Meanwhile, Ava calls the cop, Christopher Maloney's character, back to her place and wants him to go to Old and has sex with him. And then she's like, oh, you need to go to Old Town. He's like, you don't understand what you're asking. He's like, honey, if you want this body ever again, you are going to go there and do this. He's like, you're asking the impossible. Oh, no. And she just lures him with sex. And so he caves and he gets with his partner Bob, and they're driving to Old Town, and Bob's like, you can't do this. This is out of the question. We're not allowed to do this. You got to do this for this bitch, and blah blah blah. And he starts insulting her, and his partner's just getting angrier and angrier, gripping the steering wheel, trying to withhold his rage, saying, "Stop insulting her." Held it off, but no. And then finally, that's right. His name's Mort, and he finally turns the gun on Bob, and Bob's just kind of dryly says, "Mort, no," and then he just shoots Bob in the eye,
through the eye,
kills him, parks his car, and realizing that he's done for because he can't take on Old Town alone, he realizes it is impossible, but his partner was right, and so he then offs himself instead.
And that's the end of Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, that was I get the idea of it. It's like, okay, the siren can affect anybody, but now that he's free away from her, he's like coming to his senses and, oh, damn you type thing. It's like, I get it. They're trying to do that type of lore, but it just that story felt a little dry.
But I can see, have you ever, and I'm sorry, Kat, I don't mean to get off on another tangent, but yes, I do. Have you ever seen the movie Way of the Gun?
No, but Phil says Jeremy Piven seems miscast. I kind of agree. In that role.
He was fine. He was fine. He was so mayonnaise, it didn't matter. You've never seen Way of the Gun.
Maybe, I don't know.
There's just a weird thing about you can draw empathy from the people who are doing the murder. Or at least I found.
Ava decides that because the cop has now killed himself, she needs help. So she goes to Wallenquist, another severely disfigured guy played by Stacy Keach.
Hang on, one more thing. What? I just wanted to say I don't advocate murder. Please continue.
So he goes to him and she's asking for help, and Gail is secretly there at this party, and she overhears the plan. And so she goes back to Dwight and they come up with this idea. And she apparently has already been playing him because Wallenquist mentions that he's got this guy from Texas coming in. Well, the guy from Texas is clearly Dwight, having gotten part of his reconstruction. I'm guessing this is the time where they should have recast him as Clive Owen, but for some reason they just decided to do a because this is supposed to be post surgery, so he should look like Clive Owen, but instead of casting him to play the role the rest of the way, they just did makeup on Josh Brolin to try or prosthetics to make him look a bit like that. Not very convincing, but okay. And
did you let it slide? Did you let it slide, or did it bother you?
At first, it bothered me because I was kind of confused. I'm like, wait, is that supposed to be Dwight? Because I'm like, wait, because I didn't think because my assumption was that when Gail overheard the conversation between Ava and Wallenquist and heard Wallenquist talk about this specialist, that she was going to warn Dwight about this. I didn't realize that they had already set a plan in motion themselves and that Dwight was the specialist at first. I didn't realize that. And so, because at one point, Dwight even goes to see Manute in the hospital where he's since got, because like Marv ripped out his eye during the siege. And so, and he's got, because when Marv and him went to the house to kill the so-called abusive husband, Marv ripped out Manute's eye, and he tells him, oh, he basically reveals that he falls for her as well. And Dwight's like, oh, you must be her lover. And he's like, oh, you idiot, I'm not her lover, and that kind of thing. And tries to set him straight.
Right.
So Dwight shows up.
If you haven't seen the movie, I recommend it. Spoilers, by the way.
So Dwight shows up as the mysterious Campbell from Texas. Manute's there to greet him, but he's like, no, I got some other ladies picking me up, and it's clearly Gail in disguise. They pick him up in this red car. They drive to the mansion, but the ruse doesn't last very long. Miho slides out of the trunk and slices this guy's throat. Ava and Manute see through the ruse. You have a big battle. And funnily enough, it seems like they killed Manute. I mean, they shoot him radically to death in the fountain, and yet this is a prequel, so I wasn't really sure what was going on.
My idea was that because they sort of like in A Dame to Kill For, they did set up like a fight between Manute and Marv. And it was like, oh, I can't wait to look forward to this. And so I think that Manute is as strong as Marv, in which case you can shoot him as much as you want. It doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah, because it seemed like he was dead, but so they shoot him to death.
Sin City rules, right?
Oh yeah, and then Miho's moving across the rooftops
at the
estate, killing everybody.
This is sign language for Sin City rules.
And Dwight ends up embracing Ava and killing her. Finally, having the strength to do that. leaves her dead, and then he goes away with Gail. And
did we
that's the end of
mention
that
how
story.
much naked there is?
Yeah, a lot of Ava doing that because she's using her body as a siren to win it, that kind of thing. So
I'm just really, you know what? And it's interesting to juxtapose with Jessica Alba.
Yeah, who you don't see naked at all.
And you know what? And that is her contractual right. No argument whatsoever. She prefers not to do the nudity.
Right,
but
so
there is so much nudity in these movies. You got Carla Gugino. You get...
What's your point?
My point is, hey, Scott, how do you sound like a creepy old man? Start coughing.
So what's your point you're making about the juxtaposition?
The juxtaposition is that you still have a certain level of innocence in this film when it relates to the character. Like Nancy, you never see naked.
Yeah, that's true.
And she's supposed to be innocent. Now, I know we're just about to get into the hot stuff when she starts cutting her face because she goes crazy.
Well, my issue with this middle story, The Dame to Kill For, is it was obvious that Ava was playing it from the start, and it's largely dialogue and straightforward, and it doesn't really pop to me. It's like a kind of straightforward, dialogue heavy. It doesn't have any flair of theatricality. It's just like, the siren who everybody thinks is really hot, and they'll do anything for her, and it's like, and you could see where the story was going. So I just didn't really. I kind of liked it. I feel it needed more flair or something. It just didn't do much for me. And that's unfortunate because that takes up the bulk of the runtime. So then we get to
I love A Dame to Kill For.
All right.
Then we get to
the second half of Johnny's story, and it starts with Johnny knocking this guy's door, and it's Christopher Lloyd, and he answers in these boxer shorts and a bathrobe, black or red and white stripes. And
wasn't it great to see Christopher Lloyd?
It was awesome to see Christopher Lloyd in this. And Johnny's like, I'm looking for a Dr. Koenig. He's like, that's Mr. Dr. Koenig. I'm looking for a Koenig. No, he says, I'm looking for Mr. Koenig. He's like, no, that's Dr. Koenig to you, sonny. And he brings him in, and he sits down in this rickety, creepy old barber's chair. And he's like, what do you got? And he gives him $40. He's like, oh, $40 you got, and $40 you get. And he takes these like little flimsy tools, and it removes the bullet from his thigh by just cutting into it. And Johnny's like, freaking out and whinging. And he gets the bullet. He's like, $40, gets the bullet out. And he needs to give him more money because he shows him the fingers all twisted and bent. So he gives him more, and then the doctor just starts breaking his fingers back into place and just grueling. And Johnny pays him some more, and then he just goes to leave. And Cody's like, sure, don't say thank you for any of this. And I love that they cast Christopher Lloyd in just such a small role, But that was great to see him. And Johnny is not the least bit phased. He goes right back to the casino. Or he goes back to his house first, and he sees that they've killed Marcy. Oh
my God! How can you say that so casually?
Well, they did it, and so he's kind of troubled by that.
Yes.
And so he goes back to the casino, and he whips up some winnings again. And Marv decides to snag some of his winnings. He's like, "Oh, you go and pick a fight with somebody, kid?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go kill Senator Rourke." He's like, "Oh yeah, good luck with that, kid," And so he takes some of the money, helps him with it, and he takes the bundle. He goes back to the same card room, and the lieutenant, the police commissioner guy, is surprised to see him there. Kind of winces a bit because he knows he can't help him this time. But Rourke is kind of curious, and we see that Nancy is spying on them from her back room at the bar. And so Johnny comes in to sit down to play cards with him again, and he wins again, even though Rourke thought he had him in the bag. And Johnny's like, haha, I've beaten you twice now, and everybody's going to know that story. You lost both times, you're a sore loser, and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter if you kill me, because everybody's going to tell that story. And every time that story is told, you lose again. And I'm like, I love this. But then Rourke proves how much of a little bitch that he is when he whips out his gun and shoots Johnny dead. And he's like, get this little fucker out of here. And so they drag his body away. And I admit, I like that, the implication of what the payoff is supposed to be, but you never get to see that payoff. You never get to see Rourke, other people telling this story, to see Rourke's reputation dragged through the mud. It's just kind of a proposition.
It never is.
Right, and the fact that nobody in that room is obviously going to utter a word about what they saw, then, well, who's going to tell the story, Johnny? You know, because you're dead,
No,
and then
no, I know, but like I don't know,
that's
playing.
why to me, I
Oh no, no, no! I'm just saying, like
I didn't
I
think the payoff was big enough to justify splitting this story in half because, again, uh,
ah
nobody who's going to tell the story. I mean, it's over with now. You know, it's like he shot him, and it's like, okay, that's a nice sentiment, Johnny, but who's going to tell this story? Nobody.
maybe I'm being too romantic with it. Maybe I'm being a little precious with it. Is that I got to see that story?
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, no, you're right. Like everybody in that room who saw what happened turns out to be a bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. So yeah, Sin City's a son of a bitch.
Yeah, so then we get to the final story, which starts with Nancy, and we see that she's throwing herself into her routines, getting a bit more raunchy, changing up her routine, and even Marv can see that something's wrong. And
You know
Nancy's,
what? Hang on. Before you get into that, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you right off the.
what you do?
I do. So, no, but like that was the part of the character of Nancy that struck me the most was when Marv was like, she's being too sexual.
That's what I just said.
Am I supposed
Yeah, because like I was saying, she's throwing herself into routines, getting really distracted, being a lot more raunchy, and Marv just like, oh, there's something wrong. I'm out of here. So he
You did
leaves,
say
and back,
that. You did say that.
yeah,
Yes.
and then, yeah. So you basically stopped me to repeat what I just said. So then
Yeah.
Nancy, we see back at Nancy's house that she's really depressed. She's drinking more, and the
You
ghost of
do
Hardigan is there.
understand that I like the sound of my own voice.
And the ghost of Hardigan is there, kind of haunting her, telling her not to do these things, get your life back on track. It's clear that she never forgave him. She's got all these posters following Rourke's all the misdeeds on the wall, his face scratched out, writing murderer on it. So she's like really upset. And then she just kind of loses it backstage one night and just starts cutting herself. And Hardigan's
Like
ghost
all
is
over
there
her
telling her not
face
to
and
do it.
shit.
Telling her not to do it. And finally, Marv walks into the bar and sees her sitting at one of the tables, and she's all cut up. And he's like, "Just give me a name." And she's like, "Rourke." And they leave together. And as I mentioned before, they just effortlessly sneak into the mansion and like kill everybody. And
Which is
Marv
awesome.
Marv gets kind of down and out for the count a bit, and so Nancy goes off by herself into Rourke's room, but she thinks she's got a shot. She fires. It's the mirror. He fires at her, and he taunts her, saying that, "Oh, I've wanted to kill you, blah blah blah, after you killed after what happened to my son." And fires a few shots at her. He's like, your Hardigan shot my son's pecker off, and then he ripped it off. Wonder where I should shoot you next." And then he shoots her in the left thigh, and then she starts trying to reach for the gun. And he's like, this is the part where you should be pleading with me to live and apologize and not trying to reach for the gun. And he starts shooting at her again. And but then in a weird twist, a truly supernatural twist, Hardigan's ghost pops up, and Rourke sees him and spins around in fear. And that gives Nancy time to grab the gun, and she shoots Rourke in the shoulder first, and then walks up to him, and she's like, "This is for Hardigan," and she shoots him right in the head, killing him. And it's kind of like she's avenged Hardigan, right?
You know what?
To me,
And then credits.
And like I mentioned before, I just felt this story was really bland because they keep talking up the Rourkes as being these all-powerful, petrifying people that even Marv wouldn't want to go up against in any normal circumstance, and yet. Or even Hardigan couldn't even fathom going up against it. Yet here, Marvin and Nancy just waltz right on in like it's no big deal and just kill everybody. And it's like,
is Nancy a Mary Sue? Is this movie woke?
No, it just didn't have any flair to it. And it's like, I didn't really. It just, I mean, yes, I get it. You want to get Senator Rourke because he's the bad guy, but I just didn't, because this is coming off of the card player story where you've already shown how much of a little bitch Senator Rourke is. I felt like I wanted him dead more for what he did to Johnny than what he did to Nancy, because that's removed by, because the events of what happened to Nancy is removed by a whole other movie. And it's like in this movie I was watching, I was thinking about everything he was doing to Johnny, And so that's kind of like, I wasn't thinking as much about what happened to Nancy and Hardigan at the time, because how fresh that other story was in my head. And so, but again, it just felt like a very flat, bland ending. And it's like, so taken at large, like I said, the Johnny character sort of has a payoff. I like that he's super suave, Danny Ocean-like, but the payoff doesn't really make as much sense as it could. The Dame to Kill For story, I thought was very dialogue heavy. I saw the plot turns a mile away. And for me, the favorite is Just Another Saturday Night, which is the opening of the film. So I think it was too little too late, not the right selection of stories, because it's an anthology after all, so you can put any stories you want. And so I'm sure there were more theatrical stories they could have chosen. This collection of them together, I just wasn't feeling it as much.
And you watched them back to back?
No, I watched the first one last night, and I watched the second one just a few hours ago.
Yeah, fair enough. So that's back to back. That's close enough.
Sort of. Yeah.
Sort of. I know you have a higher
back to back is like literally back to back is literally popping in the next one right when you finish the first one.
Okay. I know. Yeah. Stop yelling.
But
like, I thought that it was. I watched both 1 and 2 today.
Yeah.
I would say within half an hour of each other. Mm-hmm. Does that count as back to back?
Yeah.
So, and I thought it was a perfect representation of both movies. Like, I thought it maintained the world. And when I took myself out of it was a too late sequel, I was like, back to back, these are pretty much the same. These are 2 episodes of a season. Like, this was cohesive-ish. The only thing that wasn't cohesive was Marv. But I'm fine with Marv living.
Oh, you mean because of the timeline?
Whatever. I don't even know. Maybe I got confused.
Well, Dwight being alive and Manute having his eye, everything's time is all gerrymandered around in the second one.
So I'm not really all that worried about it. I just thought it was a fun time. It was escapist. I thought it was good. Was it brilliant? No, I thought it was Spy Kids for adult, but noir.
So what do you give it?
So I would give Spy Kids a Dame to Kill For. I would give that Sin City. Sorry, my mistake. What did I gave Sin City a 7. Yeah, I would give it a 6. I'm giving Dame to Kill For a 6.
I am too. 6 bullets for me.
Bingo. See? Ballparks.
Yeah, it just feels flatter when watching it right after the first one. Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of there. It's kind of, I just wish that it because this one cost $65 million to make, only made $39 million after splitting. That means they got 20 back, so they're $45 million in the hole on production, plus however much in the hole they were on marketing. So they lost money. And Rodriguez had warned people, if you want a third one, because Frank Miller wanted to do the Wallace story, and he says if you want us to do that, you're going to have to go out and see this movie. And it wasn't marketed well at all, and it was so late, not many people were interested anymore. With the selection of stories, I guess most people kind of felt like I did, and so it just kind of. I would have liked to see a third movie. It's unfortunate that we didn't get it.
Oh, I went and I saw this movie in theaters. Like
I was
I was looking forward to it, and I was sort of blah about it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
This time, I don't know. I'm a little bit more enthusiastic about it simply because there's nothing being made like it.
Yeah, exactly. I just wish it lived up to the theatricality of the first one. The first one felt much more comic booky to me. This felt like more of other stories taking place within that world that weren't as elevated. They weren't as exciting. So it's like, okay.
Well, and yeah, I did find how in the first one they really used the accentuation of color.
Right.
And in the second one, they do that, but it's usually highlighted mostly in eyes, which it was kind of disconcerting.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, anyway. No,
shall we go to the chat?
We don't have a chat, Cat.
Yeah, we do.
We've got like 3 chats.
Well, put them up there. Why not? All the more reason to read them.
All right. Well, anti-derivative Jill in the chat says, would you like to read it, Cat?
I assume she's talking about the sequel. Yes, she says, boring. Yes, that was my feel for the sequel, especially with all the dialogue nowhere near as intelligently written as the first. Yeah, I think part of it is also that, like, for instance, the first one, when Marv's on the farm, it's not just him having to kill a bunch of guys. You have Cannibal Kevin there as well, which is really theatrical and kind of weird. Whereas when you're breaking into Senator Rourke's mansion, it's like just regular guys with a couple guns and then just Rourke there. It's like it doesn't. I just feel there's a bit of theatricality missing, that because we've already established how wild and crazy Marv is in the first one. Add more to that in the sequel. You have the Yellow Bastard story, the classic adventure. Like, have more of that, or the big fat kill and just the absurdity of Old Town and all that type of stuff. I knew more of that. I just didn't. I didn't. It didn't really grab. I think also because I think the Dame to Kill For may have been more engaging if it was longer, because with the constricted time space, because they have to fit these other stories there, it hits the story points so quickly that it was so obvious what was going on to me from the beginning, that I felt like I was almost like counting time until Dwight figures it out and find out how Dwight going to get out of this. So I don't know, kind of like with the Wallenquist thing, where we find out that Dwight has already engineered this plan to get it to pose as some guy from Texas, and how did he fool Wallenquist into being that guy? Like, you never really find that out. And the Wallenquist character seemed kind of interesting, and like I wanted to see more of that guy, and so it just kind of it just didn't really do it for me. That's all right. Any more comments?
Apparently Philip says that Denzel is well above being minute. Then again, he did do Virtuosity.
I'm not familiar with that one.
You've never seen Virtuosity?
Never heard of it.
Oh, Virtuosity. Okay, so Virtuosity is about Denzel Washington versus Russell Crowe, but Russell Crowe is like an evil AI who can manifest himself in the real world. That'll be our Christmas special.
No.
No, probably won't.
Yeah.
And then Phil says Jeremy Piven seems to be miscast. Yeah.
Yeah, we went over that before, yeah. It was.
Is Jeremy Piven like a dickhead now or something?
I don't know. I haven't actually seen him that much. I mean, I saw him smoking aces.
Yeah, but that was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so Kat.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like? Are we going? I don't want to review what our reviews were. I don't want to. Do you want to scale them?
No. I don't think we needed to. Well, because plus the series technically isn't finished, because we know it's been announced that Tarantino is doing an 8-part miniseries. For which station or streaming service, I don't know. So we'll find out when that's going to be made. If it's going to be a week-by-week thing. If it is, we'll wait and binge it at the end and then review it or something. And that'll be the next episode, presumably, of Bullets, Blades, and Bait. Because we already decided we don't need to review the Machete movies. We kind of covered that. Yeah, we covered that in Grindhouse anyway with the fake trailers. So for the time being, this is the conclusion of Bullets, Blades, and Babes. We don't need to go over an entire retrospective yet, because we know there's still another film from Tarantino coming, the last film. So I think we should hold off until then. Yeah, that's because that would be a whole separate video anyway of us contrasting and that kind of thing. So that's not for tonight. But this is
and also we would have to be specific about the 10.
Right, and this is also our temporary, for the time being, conclusion to Bullets, Blades, and Babes, and our conclusion to the Robert Rodriguez reviews. I think our viewers can figure out how we established a clear juxtaposition between the way Tarantino directs and writes versus the way that Rodriguez writes and directs. But it was a fun series. I liked it. We can revisit it in the future when it's time, but I had fun with this series. And who knows, maybe some rich person will come along and say, hey, I want to make a third Sin City movie. Forget the Prophet. Let's make it. And maybe that'll happen. But I doubt it.
Is Mickey Rourke still alive?
Yeah.
Then let's get this going.
Yes, of course. But yeah, Marv, he's the big takeaway. He's my favorite character in these movies. The guy's awesome.
He's like Snuffleupagus, but
and then
murders.
And then for some reason, Cannibal Kevin made a real impression on me, because I just found that character really memorable for some reason, even though he doesn't say anything. He doesn't have much screen time. And just thinking that I think it was the first thing I saw Elijah Wood in after Lord of the Rings, and it was like such a wildly different type of character. That was fun. Yeah,
I
so
still
I
haven't
did
seen Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry.
yeah, so I did like these, so that's fun.
No, it's been a great time. So what are we doing next?
Are we going to announce it now? Next Wednesday, we begin our all-new series, Capes, Cowls, and Crusaders, our reviews of all things Batman.
We're doing Batman.
Yes, it's going to be Batman reviews. It'll be fun. I have something very special here on my desk that I could show you as it relates to Batman next week.
Oh, great. Me too. I got a bunch of Batman stuff.
I do. Some of my other Batman stuff is unfortunately upstairs where I can't get to it, but I do have one epically cool thing on my desk right here that I'm not going to show you right now, that I'll wait till next week to reveal it. Or maybe until we get to the certain set of films. I am a tease.
Anyway, well, I look forward to seeing it next week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and which one are we doing?
Burton's Batman 89 to kick it off. They will be out of order. Yes.
Yeah, no, we're going to shuffle and jive.
Yes, because the sequel is a Christmas movie, and we have to have that out in time for Christmas. So.
And I appreciate that. That was a request of mine, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you.
So
everyone agreed.
Happy Pearl Harbor Day, and happy Bullets, Blades, and Babes. Hope you all had fun with the show.
Yeah, I had a blast. Anyway, do you have anything, Kat? Where do you do internet things?
Sly Snide at Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and I'm here every Wednesday and every second and fourth Sunday of the month. You can find me co-hosting Unifying Force at 8 a.m. Pacific on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel. That's it. Yeah, that's it. What about you?
Oh, I'm a misanthrope. I just hang out at bus stops on the YouTube.
All right. So we sign off?
I don't know. Yeah. What do you want to say?
Let's go get some tacos.
Fuck yes. You are my hero.